Ever wonder about what witnesses do on Steemit? Curious to know what projects and initiatives are in production to make your time on Steemit more productive? This is the podcast for you. Your co-hosts, Andre and Shane, will talk about witnesses, what they do, what projects they have in development, and what concerns about the blockchain and Steemit.com they're focused on. They'll also invite the men and women who run witness nodes onto the show to discuss their roles, responsibilities, and goals. Welcome to The State of the Witness. Steemit Incorporated, the writer's block, and their respective owners take no responsibility for the opinions or statements made by the talk show hosts or their guests. Statements and show topics are not necessarily the beliefs of the writer's block or of Steemit Incorporated. The material on the State of the Witness webcast is provided for educational and informational purposes only. All right, this is the first episode of The State of the Witness. I am Andre. I am at Anarcho Andre on Steemit.com. As I'm sure you gathered from the intro, I run a witness node for Steemit. I'm an aspiring author. I'm also doing a couple of different series on Steemit. And I'll hand it over to my co-host to introduce himself. He's basically the bot king, essentially, is what it comes down to. So for our first show, I just figured we would cover some basic educational, informational ground, since the whole purpose of this podcast, this webcast that I wanted to set up with you, is supposed to be about giving people some more information about witnesses. I figured we'd just start with the basics and what is a witness, right? So you wanna tackle that, or you want me to tackle it? Yeah, that's pretty solid, straightforward explanation. Unlike, because I know plenty of people have compared witnesses to miners, and in a way we are the same thing. But unlike blockchains like Bitcoin and Ethereum, the miners work on what's called a proof of work system, and basically you have to solve the algorithm as fast as possible, and whoever solves it first gets to mine that block, and then of course you earn a small fee for mining the block. The difference with witnessing as opposed to mining is witnessing is based on proof of stake. So the process is still the same. The witness node, the people running the witness, they still uh, verify and sign the blocks that they get, but the number of blocks they get is determined by their rank or their stake in the system. So unlike with miners where it's all about, how fast your hardware runs, with witnessing, it doesn't really it's not so much for how fast your system runs, it's how many people have voted for you uh, determines how many blocks you solve in a given period of time. So I mean the top 20 ranked witnesses, they solve, one block every 63 or 64 seconds. It's 63 or 60. Yeah, yeah. So there's 21 blocks every round of block production or block witnessing, and the top 20 all get a block within that period. So that's why they get one basically every minute. And then the 21st rank is a random pick from the backup witnesses, which is essentially every witness node outside of the top 20. So from 21 down to 400. I mean, once you get down a little bit further in the ranking, obviously your chances of getting a block are a lot less. But that 21 spot, that 21st spot goes to any of the backup witnesses that are on the list, and your ranking determines how often or how frequently that 21st block gets sent to you. Yeah, exactly. I mean, for example, as at my rank right now, I'm 95, and so I solve about one block every 14 hours. If I were to continue to increase the number of vests, or more people would vote for me to increase the number of vests I have behind me, um, that period, that 13 or 14-hour period, would shrink, and I'd be getting more and more blocks. But it's all based on how many vests or how much delegated stake is behind you in terms of votes. But yeah, it's always nice to have a crowd, right? Especially for a first episode. Well, I've been here since August of 2016. So it's oh yeah, no, I've been here for over a year. But in that time, I've spent a lot of time blogging and writing posts and just doing the general steam of thing. And I mean, I would like to think that I've done a decent job building, a solid core of people that I trust and people that I can rely on, and friends and basically extended family. Some people have left, some people are still here, but for the most part, I still have a solid core group of people that I can rely on, people that I call friends on here. I took a break towards the end of December and then through the first few months of 2017 to finish writing my novel, which I'm releasing in serial parts. It's called The Darkness Below. Um, and when I came back, I decided that I wanted to try and do more than just writing posts, and I wanted to get more involved. Right, that started with finding the Minnow Support Project and getting involved there and making friends there, and realizing that hey, I've been here for a while. I do have a fairly good understanding of how all this works, and I'd like to take the next step, which for me is witnessing, running a witness node, and then oh no, I was just gonna say, and then I kind of went down the rabbit hole, and here I am now. And it's amazing because as I'm sure most of the witnesses that'll hear this, they're already familiar with the Docker program that some guy 123 wrote, who props to him for not only writing a method for loading the Steam blockchain and starting a witness node, just pretty much out of a box, but also for running a private server provider, which I use, and I have both my primary and my backup witness nodes through Privex, which is their company. I'll post a link to it on the show notes page. But I mean, even with that, even with it being a more streamlined process, there is a lot to learn. And if you actually take the time to sort of start digging underneath the surface, you pick up a lot of information in quickly. Yeah, and that's something I want to address because I know it seems, I mean, obviously, witnesses do a lot. Have our, we do have our plates full, but most of it isn't really running our servers. The servers really, unless there's, an issue that needs to be addressed, the servers run themselves. Once you have it set up and you know that it's functioning properly, it's really not too much you need to do on that end. So, I mean, far be it for me to discount all the work that we do because we all do a ton of work. But the actual running the server portion of it, it's less time intensive than it is money intensive. And it's expensive. It is not as cheap as I'd like it to be. Yeah, once you're at the point where you can actually make it profitable, that money has to be put back into your system so that way your system can continue to handle the additional blocks that you're getting to solve. So really, I mean, up until the point you get to, I mean, I want to say the top 30 really, it's more of a break even proposition. Like right now, I'm in the hole, or I'm going to be in the hole until I, climb at least 10 or 15 more slots because thank God for Privex, the solution is actually very very cost effective. But I'm still out about $110 every month just to run my servers. So anybody who's telling you that you can just pop up a witness node and make tons of cash and it's super easy and yada yada whatever, they're lying to you. Don't believe a word they say. Number one, and number two, you don't get paid net. I mean, you do earn, you can earn profit for being a witness, but it's not like you get paid in liquid funds. The blocks that you solve earn you steam power. It's not liquid steam, you earn steam power, which is nice because it increases your standing in the community, but it's not, it's not like you're rolling around in US dollars or steam back dollars or anything that you can just instantly trade and sell. It doesn't work that way. Yes, thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, you gooped it up. The top 20 make 0.19, so just about zero point 0.2. Yeah. So I mean, once you get to the point where you are generating or where you're witnessing a lot of blocks, the rewards invert. So it's not, they do have a sort of built-in function so that it actually does require, or it doesn't cost as much, or it doesn't send as much money to those witnesses to compensate for the fact that they are getting a ton of blocks. Ooh, I thought I was. Hang on. Lord, of course, we're running it out of the writer's block. Of course, we're going to have this happen. Why wouldn't we? What the heck is going on here?
I don't
Don't
real
be
Shane
ashamed.
either.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, yeah, they like you, but
Okay,
they're
all right. So
they're
there
here
you
to
go.
make
You're
fun of
coming
me.
in. You're coming in now. I think. I think. Shane, say something. Say something important, Shane.
It's something important, Shane. How are you guys doing out there? Are you able to hear me now? So the last time I checked, I believe there's about a 12 to 15 second
There we
lag.
go.
All right, hey guys, was not
Sa-
my fault.
Sadly, most of that is going to just have gone like not noticed because it was not loading the fucking audio. Of course it wasn't. Why wouldn't it? Uh okay. So uh yeah. Well, it is what it is. Anyway, we'll just keep on going. Why not? We're here, we're doing it. We're going to do it live. Let's make it happen.
Nice, nice, nice. Hi guys. Hi everybody. It's good to see. Hey, Negativers here.
Well, I was enjoying the conversation we were having. I
I,
appreciate you.
I appreciate you too. Hey, I was going to ask you a question.
Hey, go ahead.
Um, So I only have the one server right now, and my plan was once I got to about 6 gigavests in power voted to me, that's when I was going to look at doing the backup or a seed node. I noticed you already went ahead and did a backup already, even though you're not getting a ton of blocks at this point. What drove that decision, and was that the right decision for you?
Well, what drove that decision was the fact that at one point I had dropped off, like my server had shut down and I'd missed a block, and that was on the server side. It wasn't really anything that I did. So once it got back online, I went to go ahead and update my witness, which for those of you listening who aren't too familiar with it, anytime you have a witness node, you actually have to broadcast to the blockchain that your witness is up and running, and at which point you'll be put in the queue, and then you can start receiving blocks. So before you update your witness and transmit to the blockchain, the system doesn't know that you're on, basically. So I had done that, and then immediately after that, the next block I got, my server went down again, and it disabled my witness because I couldn't process a block. So I messed around with it, uh, tried fixing it myself, which of course, as I've said, I'm not the sharpest bulb in the shed, so I'm not really, I'm not the person that you would necessarily go to for Linux related questions. So I tried messing with it. I finally just wiped it and reinstalled, and um, in the meantime, once I'd reinstalled it, I had accidentally made a really doofus mistake, which I found out afterwards once I went through and retraced my steps. I finally got it up and running, but by that point, I'd missed 5 blocks. And somebody, one of the people that had voted for me actually uh, sent me a message and asked, I noticed your witness is disabled. Is something wrong with your witness? And at that point, I realized as a witness, when your witness node goes down, yeah, maybe nothing will happen, especially if you can fix it, within the hour in a couple of hours, right? If you give it a couple of hours and you're back up and running, no big deal, no harm, no foul. But if it keeps happening and you keep missing blocks, your voters will notice, especially with all of the work that all of the witnesses in MSP and in witness chat on steemit.chat with trying to push voter awareness for witnesses. Your witness voters will notice the fact that you're missing blocks. And if you're constantly down or if you don't have a backup plan, it's going to affect your position. And rightly so, because, the one job that you're supposed to do, you have one job, and that's to run a reliable, stable server. So at that point, I decided, you know what, I'll just go ahead and bite the bullet. I'll get a second server set up. And thankfully, Dracos has a fantastic failover script that he wrote for Linux, which is what I'm using now, and it allows my server to switch over to my backup, and then after that, if it's still messed up, it's going to just disable the witness before I miss another block.
And you know what? One thing is you're lucky this happened early on. Have had you been in the top, let's say 30 or 40, and you missed as many hours as you did, that would have been a ton of blocks.
Yeah.
And you miss a ton of blocks when you're up that high, and it can be a big mess. And yeah, negative voters do actually notice. Mainly the people that notice are the people that are really into the witnesses, that have a lot of SP invested into Steemit, and are keeping their tabs on who they're voting for. People that really look to make sure that who they're voting for are on the up and up. And yeah, they notice. They really do.
Yeah, and given that the people that are actually paying attention are the ones that have the highest weight votes, those are not the people whose votes you want to lose.
Exactly. You lose a big vote like I did last week, and you drop down the list a little bit.
Not as much as I would, because the only thing that's propping me up is a really big vote. If I lose that one, I'm going to be SOL. It's probably not even going to be much reason for me to have this have this show.
Well, that was the one thing that was really impressive about you during that time was, and I don't mean this as a slam in any way, even though there's no way to come across otherwise. As low as you're on the list, that you fought through that, and you decided, yes, I'm going to basically double my stake and add a fallover so this doesn't happen again. Just show me how serious you are on this, and that's pretty impressive, actually.
And that was prompted by a conversation I had on somebody else's post about what a witness should do, or what would be a good idea for running a witness. I can't remember whose it was, because if I could remember, I would just tell you who wrote it. But essentially, somebody made the comment that if you don't have a secondary, if you don't have a secondary server set up, if you don't have a tertiary server, if you don't have failover, you don't have all the stuff, maybe you should just not witness until you can afford to do all that. And my initial response was, well, I mean, we can't all afford to do that, and being a witness takes time. You have to build up your votes. It doesn't just like it. You're not granted votes based on the strength of your network, although that does factor into it, right? So that's one of the ways that you can convince people to vote for you, is that your system is very stable, so you won't ever miss blocks. And I had that conversation been in the back of my mind when I had all of this crap go down with my server, and I was like, you know what, they have a point. You should at least be able to handle the bare minimum, at least be able to want to, or provide for a server and a backup server at the very least. When you're farther down the list and you're really only processing one block every 4 or 5 days, and that's not that much of an issue, because when your server goes down, or your witness gets disabled, whatever, you got like 4 or 5 days to correct the problem. But as you get further and further up the ranking list, you have more and more blocks that you're going to lose the minute your server goes down, like you said. So it's I'm serious about what I'm doing, and I know I need to take that step, and it's better to just do it now and get it out of the way, so that way as I grow, I will already have that infrastructure in place.
So we're probably going to throw some names out there that some of you guys aren't used to, but they're big in the witness circle. There's one well-known witness. He's known as GTG, Gandalf the Grey, and he basically will not vote for anyone unless you also run a seed server, or a seed node, which is something I was looking at whenever I went up a few. But now I don't know if I should do the failover server or the seed server. So I'm going to have to pick one or the other, and I don't know which way to go exactly.
Well, the seed server is good for loading up the blockchain. That's what the seed server is there for. It's to add another node that has the entire blockchain that the witnesses write to, right? The only problem is it requires more RAM. It requires a bigger setup than what you need to run the witness node. So for the witness node right now, you can get away with about like 12 gigabytes of RAM is the bare minimum that you need. So right now, both of my servers are 16 gigabytes. I'm probably going to have to, uh, upgrade them by the end of the year. I'm sure.
Yeah,
But
we just went over 12.2. So there are some people that are
uh,
still running 12 according to some guys 123's guide. And if they haven't paid attention to that, they're going to start missing some blocks. So I'm on a 16 gigabytes server also, and the next step is to upgrade to the 32 gig and make sure everything goes well from there.
because I'm solving so many blocks that I can afford to do that.
Right, right. So that's but as I think a lot of people missed earlier. That we have some of the witnesses out there saying you can make a lot of money, but then there is a lot of involvement of paying more to make sure that you're staying up to date. So yeah, there's not a ton of money in this. It's interesting and fun, but yeah, there's not a lot of money.
We got somebody in the room that came a little bit late, but just so we can rehash some of the information we talked about earlier, which of course was my fault for leaving it out. But so witnesses solve blocks. They confirm the transactions that go on the blockchain and they sign them, and then they're on the blockchain. That's what we're talking about when we say solving blocks. Basically, they take the block of information that has a whole bunch of transactions on them. They sign that block and confirm it onto the blockchain, and then it's on the blockchain for everybody to see. But we were talking about Gandalf the Grey and seed nodes, and that's eventually what I'd like to get to. I'd eventually like to have a seed node and an RPC node
Oh
for
yeah.
for development, but that's way beyond the scope of my ability to pay for it.
Yeah, right now an RPC node will set you back about 400 to set up and then about $200 monthly.
Yeah. For those listening that don't know what an RPC node is, so where a seed node has the blockchain, an RPC node is a developer node. It allows people to go in there and access it and actually build onto the blockchain. So it's access for developers as well. And in order to do that, you have to have a server that can run a lot of information and process a lot of stuff. So it's going to cost more. That's why generally the RPC nodes are run by the people in the top 20 or the top 30 who, are getting enough either from witnessing or from posting and being involved on Steemit to be able to afford to pay for it.
And I know our audience right here may not know a lot of this, but some of the feedback we get, some of the questions we get are why are the witnesses always powering down? And that's one of the reasons right there is because they're using their rewards so that they can keep witnessing. And it's a vicious cycle. They're using it to pay for itself. So one of the arguments people always use is to when you pick a witness is make sure someone's invested in the platform. And one of the arguments against that is, well, if they're powering down, how can they be invested? Well, that's a little bit of an explainer there. If you see a witness that's powering down, especially if they're well up there, they're usually doing that to pay for all their equipment each month.
Yeah, and not to mention all of whatever projects and initiatives that they're involved in. A lot of the witnesses in the top 20 are developers, they're coders, they're people that develop stuff for the Steem blockchain. So, like, Follow BTC News has a new set of tools that he came up with to track transactions on the blockchain. You can enter your transaction number, you can see all of the information, and witnesses who are engaged in that sort of stuff generally will take some of the if they can afford to, they'll take some of the extra amount that they make from witnessing and they'll invest it into creating and coding these kinds of tools and different ways to access the Steem blockchain.
Yeah, I talked to Follow BTC News quite a bit, and they just broke the top 50, which they're really excited about. Actually, it's him and Crimson Clad are a team together, and they're real excited. But they're not making any money off this. They're not really pulling any steam. The amount they have going out to create all these tools is a lot more than what they're bringing in with the witness right now. So they're definitely in it for the love of the platform and not to get rich.
Which, I mean, at the end of the day, that's really my major concern is that whoever is witnessing this stuff, it's like I've said elsewhere and I've told as many people as I can, possibly tell. If you want to be a witness, your major concerns should not be, oh man, I can't wait to make money off of this. You're not going to make money. Number one. I mean, if you do manage to get into the top 30 within a month, kudos to you, man. Good job. Whatever you're doing, great. But your primary concern should not be, okay, well, I need to make a whole bunch of money and I need to just run this witness node so I can make a ton of money. That's not what being a witness is about. Being a witness, aside from running the witness node to confirm transactions, also means that you are a spokesperson for the platform. You are a spokesperson for Steam. Now, that being said, witnesses have nothing to do with steamit.com. I just want to make that very clear because I've fielded plenty of questions, and I'm sure Tim Cliff has fielded I don't know how many. Tim Cliff is one of the top 20. I think he's one of the top 5, actually. And
Yeah, he
he,
usually hangs around like 1 through 3, I believe. Let me take a look real quick while you're talking.
yeah, so I mean, he's up there, and he basically fields questions about accounts, whatever, and he works directly with Steemit Incorporated devs. So he's got a line to the people that run stuff. I don't even know where I was going with that, but yeah. So he answers and fields a lot of questions, but at the end of the day, he doesn't have any control over what Steemit.com does. And I say this because recently we've had a rash of 502, 504 can't access Steemit.com, or it's very sluggish, dropping posts, dropping what have you. The witnesses don't have any control over Steemit.com itself.
That's 100% correct, because we get those questions too. Why aren't the witnesses, or I do, I do. Why haven't the witnesses done anything? Our hands are tied on this. That's in Steemit Inc.'s hands. They run the front door, or I think it was said as the dust jacket of the book. You can think of Steemit as a dust jacket, or Chain BB as a dust jacket, or Busy as dust jacket, and the book is actually the blockchain itself. So Steemit.com is one dust jacket, and that's what they control, and that is actually where all the issues are happening. And the witnesses are controlling the book portion, the actual written prose, and we have no control what happens on the outside.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also something I want to mention, which a lot of people have mentioned. Um, there are multiple ways to access the Steem blockchain. So Steemit.com, like Shane was saying, that's one way. That's one method of getting to posting and commenting and all the rest of the stuff. Busy.org is another one which I have started using a lot more. I really like the interface. I think it's an improvement over Steemit.com's interface. It's not to say anything about knocking Steemit.com. I like it. I love it. I've grown up using it, and I do have my own issues with Busy.org. But Busy.org, I think, is a little bit more user friendly and a little bit more, a little bit cleaner and easier to use, right?
Yeah, it's really easy to use, and if you're using them and you drop the tag busy on there, they'll give you an upvote too. There's some features I'd like to see. I don't believe they have their wallet working yet. Once they have that going, I could be wrong on that. I may be wrong, but when I was on there last, I don't remember seeing wallet for transfers. If they can get that going, I'd be real pleased with it. The non-beta has wallet features. Thanks,
Yeah,
Mux. I've only really been on the new beta. Okay.
I was fixing to say, yeah, the wallet works on the one that they have now. The beta, unfortunately, is closed, although I have seen pictures of it, and oh my god, I can't wait to use it. I cannot wait to use it.
I don't know. I just put in the URL and it's working fine for me. I have no idea how I was able to sneak into that.
It says busy beta in the top left corner.
Sure does. nd.busy.org.
Oh man. Oh man.
Yeah, Muxy just dropped it. It's working. It's working fine for me.
Well, that's because I was just loading busy.org. That's the difference. Now, on the other hand, it's all mine. But anyway, now that I'll stop being irrationally exuberant.
No, it's real nice. It's a real nice setup, the beta version. And once they get some more features built into it, it's real nice. I'm preferring it over Steemit. I like Steemit for certain aspects, but then for actual posting, I've been doing nothing but busy.
Yeah, and actually with the beta, that I'm probably just going to switch over full time to busy.org. But that's actually something that I want to bring up since we have some time, and that's something we can discuss. I since coming here in August, one of the first posts I made, and this was like after being about a month here, when there was a ton of stuff going on. This is when they were just just putting in re-steams and all sorts of other things. Um, I'd always wondered why they had never ever built a messaging system into steamit.com, or hell, even notifications. Notifications are a fairly new thing for those of you that are new users. Uh, Notifications are new, and they don't always work all the time. Sometimes they have to take them down to do whatever it is the devs do, because I'm not a coder, so I couldn't tell you. But they tweak them and do all sorts of other tweaks to the front end. But notifications did not used to exist. You used to have no idea when somebody responded to things unless you actually loaded up the site and looked at it. So there wasn't any of this fancy, heads up stuff. But I remember one of the first posts I made was wondering why or when, if there was ever going to be like a Facebook Messenger type system on Steamit.com, where there was going to be, direct messaging. And crickets. And I'm not the only person that said it. And over time, I saw more and more and more and more people ask for this feature, and it continued to not be implemented. And I understand that Steemit has a lot of stuff to look forward to. Hard Fork 20 is going to be coming up soon, and for those of you who don't know, the next iteration of the blockchain is going to streamline account creation and a couple of other things. But as far as the front end, there hasn't been a whole lot of dramatic changes. I mean, I can't tell you how many people that I know have just wanted to have a separate column for re-steams as opposed to, your blog posts. So to separate those two out, that would just be tremendous. That on its own would be tremendous.
Yeah, that would be a nice little feature. That would be a real nice feature to have. A lot of that gets confusing of what you've re-steamed, because if you're going quickly, it's not immediately apparent if it's a re-steam or if it's a brand new post. So I'd like to see some changes on that.
Yeah, but it seems like there's less attention being paid to the front end. There's less attention being paid by the devs to steamit.com, which, in fairness, the platform, when it does work, I say when because right now it's kind of being a pain and they're addressing it, but when it does work, it feels very kind of bare bones. I mean, it functions, it's all functional, it's all usable, but there's a lot that could be done, which wouldn't require, in my opinion, a whole lot of effort to really make it that much better to use and better to access, more user friendly. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it is very bare bones. I don't know how many people are turned off by how bare bones it appears when you first come on, when you're coming from a different platform. And I know they're selling this as a social media platform, but it's not to me. To me, this is strictly a blogging platform. And I wish they would go down that road a little bit more. Um, Decide what you are, because it's not social media. Social media, you can make groups, you can join groups without third party applications such as Discord. Um, the other thing that I'm concerned with is, with all the problems we've had with the DDoS attacks and how hard Steam it's been to get into lately, that the focus is on these new tokens. And it's like, let's shore up what we have first and make it perfect before we start adding all of this extra stuff on top of it. So I'm kind of baffled by the direction that Steam Inc. is wanting to go.
Yeah, and that's again, that's my concern about it, because while I'm all about getting more users and more features, and I think SMTs will be a really cool feature to have, to be able to create your own token. For those who haven't been tracking that particular development, the next thing that's supposed to be coming along for Steemit is the creation of SMTs, and the acronym is leaving my mind at the moment when I'm trying to think of it. But basically, it allows individuals to make their own coin. So you know how like you have Steam and you have Steam backed dollars. Well, it's going to allow you, the user, to create your own coin on the blockchain, and you can use it to fund projects or to add incentives for particular groups or activities. And it's all going to be denominated in Steam.
Yeah, and it's pretty. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, do you know what the acronym is? Because I'm drawing a blank. I'm drawing the worst blank right now.
I am too. I'm in the same boat you are, but I can chat a little bit if you want to look it up. Um, yeah. So yeah, we have the SMTs coming pretty soon. Hard Fork 20, like Andre had said, is going to let the onboarding process for new accounts to happen faster and a heck of a lot cheaper. One of the concerns people have is um, there's going to be a lot of new users, and it's not completely hammered out yet, but it sounds like the brand new users are going to have very, very little SP. For example, when I started, for whatever reason, I had about 140 SP delegated to me from where no one really knows exactly what account that's coming from. If it's coming from Steam Inc., you can't really find that information anywhere. These new accounts will have very little. They may have none, but the way they're setting it up is these people are going to be allowed to go on with no SP. And it sounds like they're not going to be able to vote and interact as much until they start building up SP.
Yeah, that's essentially what Hard Fork 20 is going to do. Is instead of requiring, or instead of having that threshold for account creation where you have to have a certain amount of SP to interact with the blockchain, it's going to burn the Steam that is used to create the account. So essentially, it's just going to destroy it. It's going to be unused. And then it's going to create the account. The account's not going to have any SP in it. It's still going to, they're going to adjust the permissions from what I understand to allow you to post without SP. But you can't really interact much beyond that. So you'll be able to comment. You just won't. Your vote will be essentially meaningless for a little while until you start to gain some of that. But it'll still
Now,
be free.
now, some people will remember a few months ago, maybe a month and a half ago, there was an issue where people were having trouble saying that they didn't have enough bandwidth to post. So I don't know if that's going to be a case when Hard Fork 20 comes, because they are going to change that these brand new accounts are going to have very little bandwidth to work with also. So they may run into getting that message quite a bit. So I'm sure that as witnesses, even though we have no real control over it, we're going to field a ton of those questions.
Yeah, I have no doubt that we are. So we're going to have to be knowledgeable on being able to at least point them in the right direction, or at least have some, information and materials on hand to give people answers, even though we don't really have much control of it. Oh, and just so that I can clarify for everybody listening, SMTs are smart media tokens. I had to look it up. I'm
That's what it
sorry.
is.
I apologize for being a doofus and having a brain blank. That's been characterizing this whole show, this first episode. So I apologize. That's all me. You don't have to blame Shane for that one. That's me.
Hey, one of the plus sides I saw was I'm extra Lima being. Oh, look at that. I can't read very well. My eyesight's going to crap. But she was saying this shit as far as not having any SP. But the burning of the SP may be a blessing in disguise for everyone due to the vests that are already out there. Um, that's going to make those. That's going to make less vests available on the blockchain, which could conceivably raise the price of Steam itself. So it's still a little too early to say, but that's one of the arguments I've heard is this will help raise the price of Steam.
Yeah, and it can. I've heard that argument as well. I don't really know enough to say one way or another, but I could see that. I mean, I understand where they're coming from with it.
Yeah, and before we went into Hard Fork 19, everyone was real excited, especially that first day of Hard Fork 19 when all the rules
Oh yeah,
retroactively went into place, and there
$100
were
posts for everybody.
and there were some people out there saying, "Hey, don't get too excited quite yet. Let's see about a week or two whenever the new rules actually get into people's minds how everything works out." And Hard Fork 19 has not gone over too well with a lot of people.
I will say this: I am making less per post after Hard Fork 19 than I was before. But I think people have become a little bit more frugal with their voting, just so that they can really make it count where it counts. Because after Hard Fork 19, your 100% upvote counted for 4 times as much, but you only had a quarter the number of votes that you had before. So before Hard Fork 19, you could vote 40 times at 100% voting power. You could vote, 40 times at 100% voting power before you even began to drop off with the monetary rewards in your vote. So for those that are listening and don't really understand how that works, basically you have your steam power determines how much of a monetary impact your vote has on a post. So if you have 100,000 steam, you can bump up a post by $11 or $15 or something like that, right? Well, over time, as you vote over a 24-hour period, it decreases how much of an effect or how much of a monetary value it bumps up the post by. So say you do, 40 votes, now your vote is only worth, say, $10, and then you do some more, and then it's worth 9, 8, 7 until it gets to basically 1 cent. And as you vote more, that your voting power decreases until you don't have any. It regenerates after a 24-hour cycle, but before Hard Fork 19, you had 40 votes that you could do at 100%, and you could really, really significantly impact the monetary value of posts. Well, now you have 10. Now, each of those 10 votes is worth 4 times as much as one of your previous votes. If I'm confusing people, I apologize. Basically, every one of your first 10 votes at 100% is now worth 4 times as much as it used to be, but you only have the 10. You don't have 40 anymore, right? And then your voting power will decrease much faster than it used to.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It takes about 2.4 hours for one vote to regenerate into your voting power again.
But yeah, so I noticed that my post payouts generally started to drop off, and I've not been pulling in quite as much as I used to. But again, I think that's just because people have been more frugal with their votes, because now those first 10 votes are really worth a lot more than they used to be.
Yeah, they sure are. It's I'm still giggling though because I was just thinking about that first day when we switched over to Hard Fork 19 and how everyone was celebrating, because what had happened for the people who weren't here, um, all the votes from Hard Fork 18 were still in effect that were in their payout period were still on people's accounts. Hard Fork 19 went into effect and they retroactively put those rules on the votes that are already out there. So if you had a post out there that had $2 on it, all of a sudden that post was worth $8 and people were celebrating. They were like, "Oh, this is great! Hard Fork 19 is going to be awesome."
They were dancing
But
in the streets.
they were dancing in the streets. But as people learn, hey, I only have 10 votes to give out before it starts affecting how much I'm putting out there, it turned really, really fast.
And really, in fairness to everybody who was voting, the vote payout kind of normalized after a couple of days once Hard Fork 19 was adopted. So it kind of really did go back to what it was before for a good long while. I don't know if this is another trend. I don't think this is necessarily the fault of Hard Fork 19, which is why I've seen my and others post payouts starting to kind of taper off a little bit. I think that has something to do with other factors. I don't think it necessarily has to do with the hard fork at this point.
Yeah, and then Hard Fork 19 also brought about the all these accounts we're starting to see that are self-voting. Um, that's the other downfall. I just as an aside, I threw a link in there for Extra Lima being. That link in there is steamnow.com. You can put your account in there and hit go, and it'll show you how much your vote is worth at this particular time. It also gives you a slider, and it can show you how much your vote will be worth at a certain voting power. There's also a calculator on there, so you can see how much future votes may be worth whenever you add steam or gain more steam.
The other thing that Hard Fork 19 did, which I don't know, I kind of liked that it did it this way, but I've seen plenty of arguments against it. It used to be that the voting weight, the amount that you could affect a post, the equation to figure out how much you could affect a post by was a quadratic equation. So basically, it was a curve, right? And so on the tail end of the curve, where people didn't have a lot of voting power, it stayed low. Like the effect that you had stayed pretty low up until you got to, you know, a significant amount of SP, and then it started to rise exponentially. So you would get people, whales would have a ton of impact on post rewards, which they still do. But most, once you got past that curve back down to where where it was that apex, that like bottom point, um, your effect on a post was pretty minimal. And so what they did in Hard Fork 19 was they changed rewards from a quadratic curve to a line. So it's just a straight diagonal line. Now, that helps everybody in the middle. It reduces the amount of voting weight that the whales have, but it helps everybody in the middle and boosts everybody, which is another reason why post rewards immediately after they implemented Hard Fork 19 went through the roof, because you had people like me who my 100% upvote used to only be worth 8 cents, and now it was worth like $6. I was like, oh my God.
Yep. The other thing that happened was before the change, and it's still out there. There's a bot out there called Rando Whale, and boy, you could really increase your posts with Rando Whale on Hard Fork 18. Wait until the last minute, throw a Rando Whale on there, and with that quadratic formula, that curve, you would see your post just skyrocket real quick. Doesn't happen anymore the way they have it leveled out as much.
Yeah. So I mean, there's pros and cons, and the other thing that people have pointed out against this linear curve, because you think, okay, well, everybody's now it's a direct relation to how much steam power you have, right? Well, the only problem with that is the reward pool is limited. It's finite. It's not just an infinitely replenishing thing all the time, and you can just pull from it as much as you want. The rewards pool is limited. It eventually replenishes over time, but on any given day, it's limited by the number of people pulling rewards from it for posts and for comments and whatever. So when you have a linear curve, now suddenly the drain on the rewards pool is dramatically more, which if you have a ton of requests for rewards, it's going to divide up those requests and it's going to give less and less of a monetary reward for each transaction or each interaction, right?
That's right. And also for new people that are listening, that's also another reason why you see your vote or your post value drop. It's not only the price of Steam, which is usually the stock answer you get. Well, the price of Steam goes up and down. That's why your payout seems to be dropping. It's also the amount of rewards that are available in the pool. The more that are out there, the more that the less that your payout is going to be worth. So if you see some drop there also has to do with how many people are actually using the platform.
Well, I think this has been a pretty good episode. Do you have anything else that you wanted to say? I mean, we can go on for. I mean, I know I can talk about Windows stuff and projects and initiatives for however long, but I don't know. Do you have anything else to do?
No, offhand, I'm just sitting here having a good time tonight.
One thing I do want to let everybody in the audience know is what I'd like to do eventually with this is bring people on who run witness nodes. People that we've mentioned, Dracos, Gandalf the Grey, if he was deigns to honor us with his presence. And I don't say that ironically. I really do mean if he deigns to honor us with his presence, because that guy is a beast.
Yes, he
Um,
is.
and various different witnesses get on here and talk about their various different initiatives and what projects they're following, what they want to do. Actually, we can take a little bit of time right now just to talk about the different stuff that we're involved in. um, since you mentioned bots earlier, why don't you go through and let everybody know what kind of things you have going on, what things have you built, and what do you have planned for the future?
Oh, that's a loaded question. What I have planned for the future. For right now, what I have going on is on the bot front, I have MSP dash Shane Hug, which is a delegation bot. You delegate to Shane Hug, and you're automatically put on a voter roll from that account. And you get voted at 5, 10, 15, 20%, depending on how much SP that you can delegate to that account. And anytime you make a new post, you'll get an automatic upvote from the MSP Shane Hug account. The other account I run is an account called Upgoder, which is a bid bot. And a bid bot is basically You throw a little steam, or I'm sorry, a little SBD at it, just a little bit. And in the memo, you would put your URL that you want uploaded. And depending on how many people have thrown in for that round, depends how big of an upvote you'll get from that bot. They're pretty popular. Mine's pretty small compared to, say, Booster or Build a Whale. Those are pretty large ones. But yeah, it's a good way to get some extra steam on your posts.
Yes, and I mean it's you're the bot master. Next to Gmux, I will give Gmux the credit for creating MuxieBot, but you
Oh,
are.
whoa, whoa. You know the story on this, right? Oh, no, let's put an end to this one right here.
Oh, that was exactly the
Especially,
reaction I was hoping for. That was exactly the reaction I was
let's
hoping
stop
for.
this one right here. So
No.
here's the story. Here's the story. I come up and I'm like, hey, I'm doing MSP Shane Hug. And the original idea of Shane Hug has changed just a little bit since what it is now. And I announced it. And, woo woo, people, Muck says, hey, good job. And almost immediately a DM pops up. He's like, hey man, how did you do that? How'd you get one of these started? I want to start one of those. So I explained it to him. Next thing I know, here comes MuxieBot the day after. Is it lies, Muxie? So yeah, that's what happened. There was the running joke for a while that no matter what I did, Mux would do it the day after, that he was stealing all my ideas. So that was the running joke for a while. Sorry, I hit my cough button earlier. That's why I sort of laid off there. But to get back into future projects, right now I have a service project in mind, which is I'm going to try to use Steemit or the blockchain um, as the gateway, but I'm trying to figure out exactly how to announce it and how to work it correctly. But I'm going to be working something in with my real life job, which is a physical therapist assistant, to help some of the disadvantaged people that I work with that don't necessarily have money to buy all the equipment. Can't really do much with medicine just by the way our system is run, but equipment I can help out with. And I have something in the works where I'm going to try to use the platform to help get some of these disadvantaged people some of the equipment they need so that they can live their lives a little bit better. So that's what's on the burners right now.
That's awesome. I mean, again, it goes to, as a witness, you're not just sitting around twiddling your thumbs waiting for things to come to you. You actually have to go out and do things. And you're definitely a doer, and I'm very honored to be on the show with you. As for me, well, I have this that I'm doing here. I mean, I run this show. I run Writer's Block, with the help of some of the best people on Steam, in my opinion. I'm also involved with the Veterans Project, which I run with Guilty Parties. He's also a witness. I'm going to hopefully have him on the show sooner rather than later. And most of what I do, really, it boils down to the stuff that I release on my blog. Right now, I have something called Adventures in Law School, and the whole purpose behind that blog is to provide um, basically a bare bones, stripped down law school education for everybody so that they can be more familiar with the law, or at least the law in the United States, Anglo-American law. So that's what I have going on. Of course, law school takes up a lot of my time, so I don't have nearly as much time to mess around with bots and with coding as I'd like to. But hopefully, you, Shane, and Mux can help me with that as I go along, because I would love to do more.
Yeah, we can always talk. There's always projects. Always what's the term? Sticks in the fire, pans in the fire.
Oh,
Hmm.
irons in the
Irons in the
forge.
fire. That's it. Always irons in the fire. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, I think we can wrap it up on that. I think this has been a pretty successful show. What do you think?
Well, I think you forgot one thing.
What?
Please vote our witnesses. You can drop the link at Steam it, tilde witness. We'll probably drop the link here in just a second. Vote for Narco Andre. It's spelled just like you see it over here on the left or on the right, depending where you're looking. Um, Unfortunately, that page, you'll have to scroll down and put it in yourself. Make sure you hit the button just once, refresh, and then after you're done that, scroll back down and put my name in. My Steemit username is SWELKER101. Do that, upvote our witness, and we'll be happy campers.
We always appreciate the support, and we will always try to make good on the trust that you invested with us as far as voting for our witnesses. So, well, if there's nothing else, Shane.
Yeah, at this point, I'm all set.
All right. Well, in that case, I just want to thank everybody who came in and listened to the show, everybody who was in the our chat room asking questions and getting involved with us. Our next show is going to be next week, Friday from 6 to 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, 7 to 8 Eastern Standard Time. We do a 1-hour show, and we would be happy to have you here. I'll post links in the show notes page for how to get to our Discord server on Writer's Block, and as well as a recording of the show that we've done, which, again, apologies to Shane and to everybody listening. That was a guffaw on my part, and it will not happen again, I swear. But in the meantime, thank you everybody for listening. Thanks, Shane, for being on here with me, and we'll catch you guys next week. Have a great night.
Thanks, guys. Good night.